Hello, you're very welcome along to the Matchbook Football Podcast one final time this season. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, with a full crew of Margot Hare, Adrian, Clarke, and Miguel Delaney. And look, Adrian's refreshed from his holiday. Adrian, you missed the guys' winners left, right, and centre between the FA Cup, Europa League, correct scores coming through. So there's massive pressure on you to step up.
So I hear, yeah, very good work, boys. Good work. Yeah, no, I managed to watch the FA Cup final while I was away, so that was good. I thought that the right team won in the end, didn't they? But I don't think City are anywhere near their best. They might have to be a little bit better next weekend. We'll have to wait and see.
Okay, yeah. Stay tuned for Adrian's Man City Inter pick. Miguel Delaney won on the Seville-Roma game. It literally went exactly as you said. I think you said maybe Roma might equalise opposed to taking the lead. But aside from that, you got everything right.
Yeah. I mean, so it's the thing now, a Mourinho game, right down to all the theatrics around the Mourinho game and stuff. I suppose, to be fair, that went well beyond theatrics. It is, given the seriousness of what happened. But in the most part, right down to kind of what's going to happen with getting booked for approaching referees during the game. You know what you're going to get from a Mourinho team, especially in a big European game. There's a template for it, and it's quite a safe one to make decisions on in that sense.
Yeah.
There's got to be big ramifications here. I mean, that was too far, and I think that if people are allowed to abuse referees in this way, then it's a very dangerous road to go down. So I think they're going to have to hit everybody that was involved in this. Surely
the sanction is at least 2 games, but the fact at least is kind of the key word. I mean, they could go very high.
Yeah, the reports in Italy, I don't know how true they are, Miguel, that UEFA seem to be landing on the Roma side in terms of investigating decisions on that. I don't know if that was a leak from Italian papers or the story's been exaggerated. But I actually put up the video of Taylor getting harassed at the airport, and the amount of replies defending the fans, defending Mourinho, because I briefly mentioned that Jose is not responsible directly, but is drumming up that sort of anger. So it just shows you that there's a lot of Jose Mourinho fans out there, and there's a lot of people happy to attack referees regardless, but you end up then with the referees that are happy to put up with the abuse for the 20 years to get up to Premier League level rather than the best ones, So I think that's always the key there, Mark. But City reflections, FA Cup final, Europa League final, Mark. You watched both, I take it. The FA Cup final in particular, what do you make of it?
Didn't see the 90 minutes of the FA Cup final because I was sick on Saturday. Saw the highlights. So I can't really add too much more in terms of the betting proposition. Saw the score come through on my phone and I couldn't really believe it. There was a goal inside the first minute or two, which is always going to put your unders play under pressure. But thankfully it came through. But in terms of last Wednesday in the Europa League, couldn't really add too much more to what the guys have already said. It was probably the most predictable Europa League final we could possibly have gotten, really. And thankfully, all the key bets got up, including Miguel's long shot as well. So, happy days in that regard, and fingers crossed for a few more winners this week.
Absolutely. We'll get straight into it. So we're covering the Conference League. We're recording Tuesday morning. If you are looking for the Champions League podcast, check out the description. Head to that timestamp as well, wherever you're watching YouTube or your podcast feed. We'll take a look at the betting that we have at matchbook.com for Fiorentina versus West Ham. Really looking forward to this game here. Wednesday, 8 o'clock, live on BT. Fiorentina, 2.88. West Ham, ever so slight favourites, 2.86 in the match odds. The draw is available at 3.25. Both teams to score, yes, is favoured, 1.91. The Asian handicap line is the draw no bet market, and the total is 2.5. So, Miguel, set this game up for us from a West Ham point of view. It'll just be an incredible achievement. And in stark contrast, obviously, they had that great season last season to get into Europe. And then, look, this season domestically has been terrible. But if they end with a European trophy, it has to be seen as a really good season for David Moyes.
Yeah, I mean, what it really comes down to is potentially West Ham's first trophy in over 3 decades, or 4 decades, sorry. So it's a historic moment. There's also an interesting story as regards David Moyes, and while you mightn't necessarily call it a redemption, there'd be kind of, it'd be a major trophy from him. It would also show, though, I suppose, how, because I think the redemption maybe has already happened in terms of, because let's not forget, after Manchester United, and then actually worse than after Manchester United, after the Sunderland job in 2017, he kind of pretty much, his reputation, it wasn't quite in shreds, but he just wasn't the respected manager he had been at Everton. And that's something he's restored his career to now. And I suppose to actually win a trophy would fully complete that while adding an element of glory. I do think there is something wider here. I mean, obviously, it's a great, or it's potentially, I should say, a great moment for West Ham. And to be in a final is a kind of an honour in itself, a day to cherish. I mean, I wouldn't go abandon ourselves totally to the idea of kind of the plucky element of it, given that West Ham are one of the wealthiest clubs in the world now. They may not be one of the wealthiest clubs in the Premier League, but they're wealthier than almost every club in the Europa Conference, a competition that was, I mean, I think it's been good. And I think even the fact it's giving clubs like Fiorentina and West Ham a day like this is good. But it has felt there's been a bit of a compromise in it. And it was supposed to be for a lot of the countries or a lot of the leagues that wouldn't usually get to taste European football. And now for the second season in a row, the business end, you get kind of clubs from the bigger leagues that are involved. And then, of course, even as regards the final, despite Fiorentina's, all the nostalgia people would have, I suppose, what they were like in the 90s with Batistuta. They were one of the seven sisters of Italian football for so long, the seven bigger clubs. But this is in the context of Premier League power. But that none of these kind of more, I suppose, complicated realities take away from the fact that this is a great day for West Ham and a potentially great moment, the first trophy in so long. But as regards whether they get it, I do think it's actually close to a 50-50 game, which is nicely emphasized by the fact this is a real battle of contrasts. And in fact, maybe a little bit of an inversion of history, given it's Fiorentina, say, might play something closer to, if you want to get into all that, to what West Ham did when they were on their European runs in the 1960s, say, a bit of an attacking brio. And it's West Ham, who you would expect under Moyes in a one-off game like this to set up like a classically Italian team.
Okay, West Ham perhaps sit down and maybe be tough to break down on that. Adrian, over to you firstly on this one in terms of a bet, Fiorentina West Ham. Where are you looking to side? Because Miguel touched on it's a 50-50 game. He thinks it's a 50-50 game. The odds suggest that as well. So if you fancy one team over the other, there's definitely a bit of value to be had.
I'm calling it 55-45 game in Fiorentina's favour, actually. I just think the form book has to count for something here, and they're in good form. Over I think 10 points across their last 4 matches in Serie A. If you go a bit further, across the last 12 Serie A games of the season, they accrued 22 points. Now, only one team in Italy accrued more in the last 12 games of the season, and that was Lazio. So they've ended the season with a decent bit of momentum. They've scored goals. I think, during that run, they've averaged almost 2 goals a game. So look, they come into the final, scoring goals, winning games, feeling pretty good about themselves. And you also look, and I can't pretend I've watched loads of Fiorentina this season. I just don't get the time to cover Serie A in that much detail. But I have had a good look at all the metrics. The metrics are seriously impressive. They speak of a really well-coached team, actually. They've had the most set-piece shots in Serie A. They've conceded just 5 goals from set pieces. They've faced the fewest shots in open play of all teams in Serie A. They're a strong pressing team. They really just win the ball back very well when they do lose it. And I know that they're possession-based, primarily Fiorentina. So, I'm looking at a team here that's pretty well coached. Yes, they'll have a lot of the ball. They'll look to try and break West Ham down, but they've also got, other strands to their game, and they're not that easy to create chances against. And I think I make them slight favourites here, even though they're up against the wealth and the power of the Premier League. I think they'll be the ones going for the win, and that David Moyes will be a lot more pragmatic, looking to hit them on the counter. So as well as West Ham have done to get here, I wouldn't overblow the achievement. I've got to be honest. I don't want to sort of pour water on it, but I mean, they've been overwhelming favourites against every opponent that they've had up until this point. West Ham, they should have made the final. If they hadn't made this final, I think it would have been a little bit embarrassing, to be honest. So I'm not buying into the fact that this is an amazing achievement. But look, if they win it, well, good luck to them, and they've got a shot at winning it, West Ham. But I just got a little fancy for Fiorentina here. West Ham, Yes, they're form players coming into better nick. You know, Rice, Paqueta, Bowen, Antonio. They finished the season better than they started it, but they're up against a team that's in a pretty good groove at the moment. So for me, I'm not going to go all out on Fiorentina here, but I will go Fiorentina with the draw no bet. So if it's a draw after 90, we get our money back. So yeah, that's my lean here, and it's just under even money as well, which isn't bad.
Okay, Fiorentina drawn a bet 1.95 around that currently. And Mark, over to you. And do you kind of agree with Miguel, Adrian, in the sense that Fiorentina are going to have most of the ball here? West Ham will sit off, try and counter-attack. And if you do, how do you go about seeing if there will be goals in this game off the back of how the game's going to set up?
Yeah, I agree. That's probably the pattern of play here. But yeah, I like goals, and I think there's probably a fair argument to suggest that, you know, being a cup final, opposing goals would be the right way to go about things. And the unders here is pitched at 176, which I think is probably fair enough. But I actually like both teams to score at 194. I think you said it was 191 now, so it's been clipped in ever so slightly. But I think that's a very reasonable angle of attack. We know West Ham had the propensity to be pragmatic at times, and of course, being such a historic occasion with David Moyes in situ as well, there's potential for them to be quite cautious, an element of fear perhaps as well. I don't expect them to go all out attack by any stretch, but you know, this Fiorentina side, on the other hand, is built to go forward, and their head coach Vincenzo Italiano has a reputation for being proactive, being front foot, and that's reflected in a lot of the metrics in Serie A, as Adrian's already pointed out. But only Inter and Napoli had more shots. Only Inter and Napoli had more shots on target in the domestic league this season, which kind of goes to show what you get from Fiorentina. And if anyone saw the Coppa Italia final a fortnight ago against Inter Milan, they will have gotten a very good flavour of what this Fiorentina team is all about. They start front foot. They scored very early, but they weren't able to stop the service to Lautaro, who scored twice before half-time, and they piled on the pressure second half, but just weren't able to equalise. Had 19 shots in that final, Fiorentina, and we've seen very similar efforts in the Conference League throughout this competition. They have had some very beatable opponents and still managed to sort of struggle their way through, really. If you look at the last two rounds against Basel and Lech Poznan, they've created huge amounts of opportunities, hammered the opposition goalmouth many, many times, but just not being clinical or consistent enough, really, to sort of get the comfortable results they probably deserved on balance of play, really. So you look at those quarterfinal and semi-final ties, one of them which went to extra time, but Fiorentina won the shot count 80-33 on aggregate, and the XG count 10.11 to 4.26. That's just a 4-game sample. So they're creating huge amounts of opportunities, but just not finishing consistently enough. And ultimately, they are quite an erratic team. Defensively, they can be pulled out of position. They can be exposed by bigger, stronger opposition. So, you know, if Lech Poznan and Basel can put them under pressure, there's no reason why West Ham can't do either. So in terms of a winner, I think it's very hard to call. As the market suggests there, it's pretty much a pick-em. And I would favour very slightly towards West Ham, just because of their sort of defensive resilience and organisation, their ability to sort of hold a game, rather, whereas Fiorentina just feel to me a bit too erratic to sort of trust, really, in a tight fixture. So, but yeah, I much prefer the goals option. West Ham only kept 3 clean sheets away from home in the Premier League all season. They did keep a decent RZ side at bay in the semi-final second leg, but they were pretty uncomfortable for large stages of their game against Ghent in the previous round. And this is a step up in class, not just for Fiorentina, but also for West Ham in this competition too. So I think we've seen all too often Fiorentina have conceding goals quite easily in this competition, but they have the ability in forward areas to score. And I think the central midfield area will be a fascinating battle with Declan Rice up against Amrabat, who everyone knows from the World Cup had a marvellous tournament as well. But going forward, Fiorentina have players. They might not be sort of consistent goal scorers. I guess you could say Antonio's similar for West Ham, but they've got threats from distance as well. Watch out for Nico Gonzalez, who's a great set piece extraordinaire and an ability to score from distance too. So yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised at all if Fiorentina scored and put West Ham under pressure, but ultimately I just can't trust them to keep a clean sheet in this match.
Okay, Marcus landed on both teams to score. Clipped in a little bit as he touched on 1.91. And Miguel, for a bet here, you're in agreement with that, both teams to score.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. I mean, because as for all I said that it would be closer to an Italian approach for Moyes, and I think he will set up very restrictive, that doesn't necessarily translate into being a cast iron defence, which they have not been. So while I do think the game will be a match of contrast, that doesn't necessarily play into being a low-scoring game. And yeah, I think West Ham will be breached because of a Fiorentina attack, but equally there'll be enough for West Ham to get him behind as well. And then this is another element of the game as well in terms of Antonio's maybe big moment of redemption, especially after maybe a little bit more of an indifferent season compared to previous when there was a time when he was a revelation again. And yeah, both teams to score at that price seems quite promising.
Yeah, look, I'll add that my second choice bet here would absolutely be both teams to score. So I think that's probably what we should go with as the pod one. Yeah, I mean, they've scored in 15 of their last 16 league games, Fiorentina. So I think the chances are very high that they'll score. But as Mark points out, they haven't kept that many clean sheets themselves. So yeah, I think you're looking at 1 apiece or 2-1 either way. That's, or even bigger than that potentially. But I would see a sort of 1-1 or a 2-1, maybe in Fiorentina's favour, given what I said earlier. But yeah, both teams score is a pretty good shout, I think, here. 12 of their 13 games, by the way, in the Conference League went over 2.5 Fiorentina. So they've been involved in some really good games.
Okay, yeah, the podcast selection as Adrian set up. Go on, Mark. So yeah.
I was just going to say as well, we sort of gave West Ham a big build up there at the start about how historic this occasion is, but I think it's worth just kind of flipping it around for Fiorentina as well. This is a club who were extinct in 2002, went into administration, weren't able to get a license to play in Serie B because of their financial troubles, had to drop down to the 4th tier. So, this is a huge moment for them in their history too. In the fact that they've managed to climb their way back up to the top tier and now are competing in Europe and in a European final. So, yeah, it's a massive occasion for the Italians as well as West Ham.
Yeah, I'm completely agree with Miguel. Conference League has been a great addition. It'd be great to get those smaller leagues eventually get into finals like this. But look, I think it is still good. I know clubs like Fiorentina, West Ham are big and probably not what the Conference League is about. But at the same time, giving these fans a day out, particularly given what Mark mentioned, the context with Fiorentina and of course West Ham going for the first trophy in about 30, 40 years. So yes, both teams to score is the selection. 1.91. We're recording Tuesday morning, so it'll be interesting to see if there's any market moves before that. We'll go to the big one, Manchester City versus Inter, Saturday, 8 o'clock. It is going to finish the football season, 10th of June. We'll take a look at the betting that we currently have on Matchbook.com. The match odds see City 1.5 favourites, Inter 7.6, draw is 4.8. Both teams to score, yes, is available at 1.99. The Asian handicap line sees Inter get plus 1.25 goal head start, and 2.5 is the total, but that is shaded a good bit towards the over. So, Adrian, I want to get straight to you because this is an interesting selection. You did catch the FA Cup final, and I'm guessing from what you said earlier on, this is maybe hinting at what your pick is going to be here.
Well, not so much just the cup final. I just think since they secured the Premier League title, City haven't really been at it. They haven't been at their very best. I know they've mixed and matched their teams in preparation for the FA Cup final, but they weren't that good against Brighton. There was a bit of a non-event against Brentford on the last day. And in the cup final, I thought they coasted for periods. Obviously, they started the game well, and then they didn't put their foot on the gas. Good start to the second half, got them that second goal, and then, but from there, they were good, but they weren't at their scintillating best. And yeah, I just think that that's I wouldn't describe that as a red flag. But I would say that they're not coming into this game in at their very best. There's also a lot of pressure. I'm not tipping up into here. The easy pick here is obviously to side with Manchester City. They're considerably the stronger team, and they should win. There should be no excuses here. They should go out and win the game because they've got better players, and this should be their time to claim the treble. But this is high pressure. This is they did very well to catch Arsenal and to win the league. Brilliant finish to the season. Outstanding. They've won the FA Cup final that they were favourites for. Brilliant. This is the pressure game now. This is where it all comes to. They want to cement their legacy with the treble. And with pressure, they could tighten up. That is a possibility. And they're up against a team that are a very good cup team under Inzaghi. I think, just look at Inzaghi's CV. It's littered with cup triumphs, cup final successes. So I think that this could be an awkward game. That's where I'm coming from here. Manchester City are probably not going to concede more than one goal. I was looking at it. The last time Manchester City conceded more than one goal was against Spurs in January. 30 games have happened since. So maybe the best that Inter can hope for is one goal. But will that be enough to take it into extra time? I think it might. because Manchester City, not been at their fluent best going forward. Haaland has not been on fire. Relying on Gundogan the other day. I can just see Inter playing a clever tactical game here, and taking it the distance. Potentially, they are the second top scorers in Serie A, 71 goals. They've got Lukaku and Lautaro, and that finished the season in good nick. In the knockout stages of the Champions League, 5 clean sheets from 6 games. So they've proven that they can be decent defensively. The only game they conceded was against Benfica, of course, with that 3-3 draw. I just think that they've got the ability here to grind things out and just to keep Manchester City at bay. So I'm looking at the draw as a little sort of cheeky, outsider-ish long shot shout. I think it's a runner here. I really do. I think the last 5 or 6 finals. I think the last where to write it down here. I can't quite remember. Yeah, none of the last 6 finals have gone to extra time, but 3 of the previous 5 did. Maybe we're due one. Maybe we're due a draw here and an extra time. And I think Inter, who finished the season pretty well, 7 wins from their last 8 in Serie A, might just surprise a few people and make this a competitive Champions League final. Personally, I think for the neutrals, that would be a real positive.
Okay, yeah. Miguel, do you share any of that? Do Inter have any sort of a chance in a final in a 90 minutes to maybe, as Adrian touched on, bring it to extra time? And for example, City might put them away maybe 2 or 3-1 in extra time sort of thing. Oh, sorry.
From City's drop-off momentum, and also I think there's a bigger potential explanation to that, which is that Guardiola's physical conditioning, traditionally going back to Barcelona, was always to have his team at absolute peak in November, December, and March, April. So maybe we're if he still plays in the same way, maybe we're seeing that slight drop-off from the, I suppose, unstoppable form they were in around those wins over Arsenal and Madrid. That's one. Then maybe there's just a slight loss of rhythm from, as Adrian says, winning the title, and having 3 games basically that were dead rubbers. That can affect teams. Then the other side, as Adrian says, Inter, while there's a strong argument that pound for pound they are one of the weaker Champions League final qualifiers in maybe two decades, maybe longer. But they've got a very good cup manager who knows exactly how to navigate these one-off games, and they've got they've got more individual quality than AC Milan, say, and that means players that can just suddenly raise it and elevate it for these individual games, especially in defence, where I think they will look to draw Haaland, say, into a physical battle. All that said, though, I think City are going to come out in this match like they came out in the Madrid game. In the Madrid game, they're very much fired by the memory of what happened at the Bernabeu last season. Now they're going to come out fired by what happened in the Champions League final 2 years ago. And I think they'll come out with that real conviction. And it's why I think this actually sort of goes one of 2 ways, and why, just breaking it down, the logic just does suggest maybe quite a comfortable City win, because I think it really depends on Inter withstanding that first 20 minutes. If they get through that and it's still 0-0, then you could get into one of those situations where City might be playing very well, but suddenly that doubt creeps in from what's happened before. Does that tense grows at one of those days, and Inter themselves respond to that? But I mean, the one thing to be said for that, of course, is it looked like similar might happen against Madrid, and they just kept coming. But I mean, that's one thing I expect from the game, is that City to come out with full conviction and full fury, and I think that is where it's going to be decided. My inclination would be they'll have too much force for Inter, get the goal they require, and from that it'll be a relatively comfortable game. We'll come to the correct score in a moment. But while I take a lot of Adrian's points, I think it's something I have been thinking about myself. For me, logic dictates I suppose the easy prediction.
Yeah. And Mark, over to you. Like I touched on this with their last couple of Premier League games. Did you share any concerns, Mark? And you were happy to write them off. But look, form, and the guys will know this, and Adrian in particular playing over the years, it is very hard to just switch a tap on and off. Just anyone who's played for teams at any level over the years. Do you share any of the concerns that Adrian has maybe over the last 3 games that haven't quite been at it as much?
Yeah, of course. But as I said before the FA Cup final, I've just ignored what happened in the Premier League because they're not playing their first 11. They're not playing for anything of value, really. They're almost just playing to try and keep fit and try and keep keep themselves available for these matches. I'd much more stock in what happened in the FA Cup final, and the fact that that's happened a week before the Champions League final, even if they weren't at their best, it's just given them that run out in a high pressured environment. And look, it was a big game for City last week. Not just the opportunity to keep the treble alive, win a cup final, but it's also Manchester derby. So you could argue it was a bigger game for Man United to stop them sort of recreating the same history that they managed to achieve. But even still, I think it was quite significant, and I'm quite happy that they weren't at their best against United because it shows you that there's still a level for them to reach. And in terms of this match, they are, by my records, the strongest Champions League final favourites in recent history. Barcelona won 165 when beating Juventus in 2015. I don't have prices going back to sort of the early 2000s, but City are a very similar price here to what they were against Man United at Wembley, which will be a week previous. Curiously, well, when we spoke at least, they drifted before the match. They went off about 166, which was very strange because we knew Ortega was probably starting in goal anyhow. So that was a surprise, and I'll be watching the markets this week for similar sort of movements. We're talking on Tuesday before the game on Saturday. Fascinated to see if it goes a similar way because Ederson will be starting for Man City. We expect them to be at full strength. And yeah, we didn't get them at their best against United, but second half, United looked like they put them under plenty of pressure. Kyle Walker, especially. Inter will have been encouraged by that because they play with wing backs, and you'll look at Dumfries and DiMarco as the potential to expose them down those flanks. But on the flip side, those wing backs can be Inter's downfall as well because the spaces that they can leave does allow those three centre backs to be dragged out of position. So my hunch is Inzaghi will not allow that to happen. He'll be very pragmatic and aim to play on the counter-attack and flood the channels, sit deep, aim to frustrate. But what Inter just cannot afford to do is start slowly, which they have done a couple of times in recent months, really, especially that Coppa Italia final, because if you concede early or concede the first goal to Man City, I think it's going to be a death sentence for Inter here. So you can't really chase the game against Man City, unfortunately, and they are the best team on the planet. They are the highest rated team on the planet by a long, long way. We saw that in the last two rounds of the Champions League, going off favourites home and away against Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. It shows how highly the market rates this team. And I know it was a long time ago, but Inter did have Bayern Munich in their Champions League group, and they were beaten quite comprehensively 2-0 home and away in the group. They lost the shot count 23-7 in Munich. They lost the shot count 21-9 in Milan. The average or the aggregate XG outcome was 423 to 147. Now, this is a bigger step up in class to Bayern Munich to Man City. I know they were excellent over two legs against Milan, did a professional job over Benfica. I wasn't massively impressed against Porto, but that's quite a manageable knockout draw. Compare and contrast with Man City having to come through against Bayern and Real Madrid. Again, I know the big performances, the most impressive performances came at the Etihad, but even still, it's difficult to sort of pick flaws in that Man City side right now. And I'm just going to play this the same way I approached the FA Cup final. Back City to win alongside under 4.5 goals at 1.8. Just gets the clutch of the most likely correct scores on side. Now, the last four finals have been settled in 90 minutes by just a 1-0 or 2-0 scoreline. Just 3 of the last 53 European Cup finals produced 5 goals or more. Interestingly, 3 of which occurred since 2014-15. I just feel that the way in which Inter have set up and all about staying in this game as long as they possibly can, being patient, playing on the counter, aiming to frustrate, should in theory give us a relatively low scoring game, 4 goals or fewer. Obviously, if City score early, it gives a completely different feel to this match. But I think that's the case in any selection you have. Game state dictates what the final outcome will be. So, yeah, I think Inter can be competitive, keep this contest alive for the most part. But I think that 1.8 does really appeal to me. I have to be pro City. I just don't expect it to be a complete demolition.
Yeah, and for you, Miguel, you're pro City with your bet, but you do want to couple them with over 2.5 goals.
Yeah, I mean, because Inter can score here. I suppose maybe this one will be more fully explained on my correct score below. I do think Inter can score, which at least this covers that. But I think equally it's possible that if City get one early, it becomes one of those games where they scored a few different intervals and then kind of almost it's a procession to their eventual victory.
Okay, yeah. I think for the podcast session, we'll probably go with Mark if it's not broke, don't fix the FA Cup final. City under 4.5 goals. Could be tempted maybe just before the off to have a little play on the draw, Adrian. Just to, you made a decent case, and the lads, 4.8 to 4.8. Adrian, it doesn't take much to.
It should be Man City and under 4.5.
Yeah,
it really should. But I don't know. I just think this is such a high pressure game. But yeah, we'll see.
Big game for Pep's legacy as well. So that's City and Inter in the Champions League final, Saturday, 8 o'clock. If you are watching on the live stream, we would appreciate if you hit that like button. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel for free. And for a full recap of all the bets here, insights.matchbook.com, covering both finals, will be available from Tuesday afternoon. So we'll go to our long shot sections. And look, Miguel, take it away, because you touched on your correct score there and what you think the most likely City and Inter scoreline. So yeah, take it away.
Yeah, I'm going for City 3-0. Look, it is the most mismatched final, probably. So for all we've talked about Inter, for all Inter's obvious qualities, which we do respect, this is the most mismatched final since 1989. That ended in a 4-0 win to Milan. City will see this as the be-all and end-all. Well, I think that it got potential to foster a situation where doubt feeds in and Inter can maximise that. I think the greater likelihood is what we've seen from the past few months, which is in these sort of games, like against Arsenal, like against Madrid, City come out with conviction to make absolutely sure, and they do that. It just feels like the entire momentum and rhythm of this season.
Yeah, 12.0 currently, Man City 3, Inter 0. Again, check those correct score markets as they get a bit liquid before the off as well. Could get a bigger price. Adrian, correct score. So you look, if you're going to back the draw, probably the most likely draw scoreline will be 1-0.
Yeah, that's what I think anyway. Yeah, price at 10.5, so quite attractive. Look, as outlined, this should be a City win, but I do think that Inter finished the season with good momentum. They were scoring goals. The fact that they kept 5 clean sheets and 6 knockout games will give them confidence that they can limit Manchester City here. And I think they're worth a goal. City don't always keep clean sheets. Didn't in the final. Obviously, it shouldn't have been a penalty in my opinion, but yeah, they don't always keep clean sheets. Manchester City. I think Inter can score. I think they can really restrict Pep's boys. One little red flag, okay, amid the brilliance of this team. What a storming finish to the campaign. They are one of the best teams in Premier League history. There's no doubt about that. When they're at their best, they're glorious, Manchester City. But away from the Etihad Stadium, they haven't blown, the socks off that often this season. Away to the top 9 in the Premier League, okay, and I know what they did in, against Real Madrid and whatnot. But away to the best teams in the Premier League, the top 9, they won once, and that was against Arsenal. They drew 3, and they lost 4. They are not as invincible away from the Etihad as they are on their own patch. And with it being such a high pressure game, Inter being an unbelievable cup team, or Inzaghi being an unbelievable cup manager, I just give them a chance here. So yeah, I'm going for a little fun pick, 1 apiece, and at 10.5, it's a good price.
Yeah, that's as strong a case as you're going to get. So 1 win, 3 draws, 4 defeats away to the top 9 this season. Manchester City, another high-pressure game, Adrian says, going with 1-1 in the long shot section. Mark, over to you for correct score. You're heading to the Conference League final, so take it away on Fiorentina versus West Ham.
Yeah, it's not the massive price, is it? But I think, as the market suggests, this should be quite a well-contested game. I wouldn't want to make a really strong call on either side, but I do expect a couple of goals in this match. I think it's a world away from the Sevilla-Roma Europa League final and scenario we saw last week. I think both teams to score certainly appeals to me. If it managed to bank in that Sevilla-Roma game, there's no reason why it can't land in Fiorentina against West Ham. And I think here we have Vincenzo Italiano in charge of one of the sides, very front foot, very proactive, and I think there will be opportunities to both teams to score at both ends. So I think the most logical selection here is to back the 1-1 draw in 90 minutes, which comes in at 6.8. So I think that's a fair price for a game where I can see both sides scoring, in a game where I just can't pick a winner, to be honest. So it felt like the best solution here at 6.8.
1-1 then for Mark. Fiorentina West Ham, as you touched on, 6.8. And then for your best bet, Mark, we will stick to you. See, can we land this bet again? And there's no surprise of where you're going if it ain't broken the FA Cup final, because a lot of things maybe went wrong for that bet, and it's still cruising at 2-1. So take it away. City under 4.5 goals.
Yeah, just rinse and repeat, really. But what I would say about Man City, I completely agree with what Adrian said, actually, about City away from the Etihad. It's not just in the Premier League either. They failed to win away at Leipzig, failed to win away at Bayern, failed to win away at Real Madrid in the Champions League as well. So, you can sort of pick holes in City's away record across all competitions, really. But yeah, they are the shortest Champions League final favourites for quite some time, really. They are the highest rated side on the planet. They have overcome Bayern and Real Madrid to get this far. Inter's form and their sort of opposition don't stand anywhere near as close to the calibre of opposition City have had to come through quite convincingly, actually, over 2 legs. So I think they can offer resistance. I think they can keep this tie alive for the most part. They are a smart side. They are capable of frustrating, but ultimately, player for player, man for man, Man City should be winning this match. And I'd be surprised if it got out of hand. I'd be surprised if Inter allowed it to get out of hand. So therefore, I think Man City to win under the 4.5 goals, considering the likelihood of those correct scores, 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, or the 2-1 and 3-1. There's a lot of good sort of range of correct scores on your side there. So fingers crossed we don't get an early goal and City just kind of get the job done in 90 minutes fairly comfortably still.
Yeah, look, the early goal just about survived the FA Cup bet. Miguel, for you, if their early goal will suit this bet, to be fair, over 2.5 goals, and particularly a City one, I guess. But yeah, you're like this play here. You just expect City to come through, but also covers if Inter do manage to nick a goal themselves.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, as Mark was talking there, I was actually thinking about I should have gone under 4.5, but no, maybe we'll go with it. And again, just like Adrian said, that maybe we'll do a final with extra time. Maybe we'll do one where there's a few more goals than there has been over the last few years, which has been, again, a kind of return to a series of tight finals. Chelsea beat City 1-0 last season, 1-0 2020 as well. In fact, the last time that 2 teams scored was 2018. Which is some time ago, and I suppose that's another side that could go against my 3-0 bet. That Inter just get that one goal that City have been conceding of late, especially if it goes to 2-0, 3-0. But ultimately, I suppose it aligns with my 3-0.
Yeah, over 2.5 goals, 1.8. The safe selection for Miguel on the Champions League final, if there is such a thing, this weekend. So, Adrian, final bet to you of the season, and you're going to go for Fiorentina draw no bet. Despite the guys trying to go for both teams to score, you really fancy taking on this West Ham side of the prices.
Yeah, I do. Sorry, West Ham fans. I just feel that Fiorentina will score at least 1, but probably 2. So to win the game, I think that West Ham inside 90 minutes might need to score 3 times. And we've been talking quite a lot about David Moyes setting up pragmatically, looking to play on the break. So much will depend, obviously, on the start of the game and whether they have to chase it, West Ham, or whether they get their noses in front. Because if they get their noses in front, it'll be harder for Fiorentina. But I think that Fiorentina score goals. They scored 15 of their final 16 games. West Ham don't keep that many clean sheets. I think they've conceded in 10 of their last 13 matches in all competitions. So I think they'll concede. I think that they could concede a couple here, which makes it very difficult for West Ham to win inside 90 minutes. So Fiorentina draw no bet is my pick.
Okay, and that concludes our podcast today and our podcast for the season. My thanks to Mark, Miguel, and Adrian. So if you want to know what the guys are doing throughout the summer, Miguel, your season, as you touched on last week, is far from over. You've the joy of the international break with England. So how excited are you?
2 stellar games there. I'm sure we'd be all over. England away to Malta. I suppose I can't complain too much.
I think we need a podcast special, don't we, on that?
Yeah. And North. I remember this happened actually. It was last summer last summer was basically at that point where I think football had basically been going on non-stop for pretty much 2 years after the break from COVID. So it was straight through from the return. Then that season went on until August, back straight away almost. Then obviously the Euros. It was the Euros before, yeah, in between. And I remember our last game last one was it was a dead rubber Nations League game between England and Italy at Molineux with no fans because of the it was. I can't remember even
it was the Euro finals, was it? I think that the ban for that? Maybe.
Yeah, that was it. That would have been it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and there might be a little bit of feeling about this with the Macedonia game. especially because we already feel that England's pretty much qualified for the Euros.
Yeah.
But let's see. You never know.
Yeah. I'm very briefly
I'm
before I go.
going into next week. I'm going down to Australia for the Women's World Cup.
Brilliant.
So forward to that. Yeah.
Listen, hopefully Ireland can get through the group there. Look, I think they'll get a huge support in Ireland, particularly given the lack of football in general outside of the Women's World Cup this summer, Miguel. But very briefly, would you catch the Ireland game? So obviously Ireland have a massive game away to Greece. Probably must not lose anyway, at least if they have any chance.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'll be watching. I don't report on them anymore in that way, unless Ireland get back into kind of a tournament or something like that. But
straight on the bandwagon then.
Yeah.
Adrian, for you, summer plans there? You're obviously back from a break yourself, so I guess you're going to kick on, keep an eye on the football.
It's a bit quieter in the summer. Yeah, if anyone wants to give me some work, that's fine. But no, I kind of welcome a little bit less. I'll be doing some bits and pieces for the Premier League and a few clients, a few podcasts. But yeah, just probably sort of 4 or 5 weeks quiet, and then we're into the build-up, aren't we, to the new campaign, which is going to be really exciting.
And Mark, over to you. It's as busy as ever in the summer, and you're going to be keeping your Matchbook Insights column as best you can throughout. There's Scandinavian football. There's plenty of other leagues throughout. You even mentioned to me League of Ireland perhaps you could delve into perhaps during the summer. So
yeah. Asia, the Americas, Scandinavia, Ireland. There's still plenty going on. But yeah, as Adrian suggested there, that we might be into June, but it's only about 3-4 weeks away, and then we start talking about the outrights and anti-post. So I'll be starting my studying at the start of July, really, because you've only got a month then to prepare for the start of the season, which will come around before we know it, really. So the first weekend of August, and Scotland. The cup competitions begin in mid-July as well, so there's not actually that long off. But I've got the in-laws coming over for 4 weeks for the first time from Australia, so I'll be ducking away to the laptop as much as I can.
Finding that Matchbook Insights column. Do check out our Twitter page throughout and insights.matchbook.com. Invariably, Mark will be up throughout the summer on a Thursday morning as usual. By and large, we will move that around if need to be based on the games. But yeah, my thanks on behalf of all the team here at Matchbook to Mark O'Hare, Adrian Clarke, Miguel, Delaney, and producer Ryan, who's helped us throughout the season. It's been a pleasure. But you, the listener, we really appreciate all the listens, all the comments on social, nice comments coming in throughout. And we'll be back bigger than ever next season. As guys touched on, it won't be long turning around. I think August 12th, the Premier League starts. The week before is the Community Shield, August the 6th, Manchester City versus Arsenal. So yeah, but thanks to the guys. Insights on Matchbook.com as always. Check out the final guys' picks. And do check out our YouTube for a few clips and social for a few bite-sized clips. Until then, enjoy the football, enjoy the summer. We will be back next season. Bye-bye.